We use what's called the law of sines to solve triangles, to find side lengths and angle measures of non-right triangles. Those are called oblique triangles. So if there's no right angles, it's called an oblique triangle, meaning you can't use the Pythagorean theorem. Once you know two sides, you can't use the Pythagorean theorem for the third side, okay? All the law of sines is a proportion. You can either do it with the side lengths in the numerator and the angle measure in the denominator, or vice versa. For whatever reason, when I was taught this, I was taught to put the angle in the numerator. So I always do like sine of A over side A, whatever. But look at how this triangle is set up, guys. It does not matter where you put the angle measures. What matters is that the corresponding side is across from the corresponding angle. Meaning, look at how when you label an angle, you use what kind of a letter? A capital. So capital A, capital B, capital C. Those are your angles. You use lowercase letters for sides. Notice that angle A is across from side A. Angle B is across from side B. And angle C is across from side C. Correct? How many degrees are inside of this triangle? 180. How many degrees are inside of every triangle? 180, okay? Very basic calculations. You guys are going to have your calculators. What we're going to do is set up like 100 proportions today and just solve them. Now, my advice to you, okay, as we go through this, my advice to you is your problem should look like this. Do you guys have a triangle drawn on your example? No. Every time you have a problem and it says solve the triangle, they're not going to tell you solve for side A and B and A. They're going to say, here's the information that we're giving you. Solve for the rest of it. So draw a picture. Draw the picture of what they gave you. So again, does not matter where you put angles A, B, and C. Just make sure you put the numbers that they give you in the correct angle, and then the side lengths are across from. If you notice, A is across from A, B is across from B, C is across from C. You guys see that? So what are the pieces that are missing that you're going to be asked to solve? Side A. What else? Side C, and what else? Angle A. All right. So what is the easiest way to find angle A? If you know two of the angles and you know a whole triangle is 180, how can you find angle A? You add the two angles and subtract. So I'm just going to say 180 minus, and I'm going to add those two angles together. So 29 plus 102. So guys, grab your calculator so you don't make a silly mistake. 180 minus parenthesis 29 plus 102. What do you get? 49. Okay, so angle A is 49 degrees. It's important to have your degree measurement. Don't get points off for silly stuff. We're talking about measurements. So you need degrees, you need feet, meters, whatever it's measured in. So now we know that this angle is 49 degrees. So what are the other two pieces that are missing? Sides, correct? So this is where your law of sines come in. It's a proportion. I like to use what is given. At the beginning of this problem, were you given an angle measure and its corresponding side? Yes, right here, correct? So I'm going to write my law of sines. I'm going to say the sine of 29 over 28. If you want to put the side length on top, you can. Equals. Does it matter which side we find first? No. What do you guys want to do? Okay, so you're going to say sine of what? How big is angle C? Sine of 102 over C. God bless you. You guys have a proportion, a fraction. If a fraction equals a fraction, how do you solve? Cross multiply. So 28 times the sine of 102 equals C times the sine of 29. Do not put anything in your calculator until the very end. If you do each calculation, each step, your answer is going to be further and further and further from the correct answer. So you need to make sure that you don't do any calculations to the end, especially web sign will mark it wrong if you don't round correctly. So what's my last step? I want to get C all by itself. So what do? Divide by the sine of 29. So now you just put that in your calculator. You hit 28 times the sine of 102 divided by sine of 29. And what do you guys get? Perfect. 56.49. It says round to the nearest hundredth, right? And what's the measurement we're talking about? Feet. Okay, so feet. So there's side C. We found angle A, that piece that was missing. We found side C. Now what's the other piece that's missing? Side A. So go back to the given information. They gave us at the beginning sine 29 over side, which is 28, equals. Now if we're going to find side A, what angle measure do we use? 49. So sine of 49 over A. Again, guys, a fraction equals to a fraction. What do? Cross multiply. So 28 times the sine of 49 equals A times the sine of 29. How do I get A all by itself? You divide. Perfect. So calculators, 28 times the sine of 49 divided by sine 29. What do you get? 43.59. Okay, question was, can you do a squared plus b squared equals c squared? How come you cannot? Only you can do that if you have a right triangle. So there's no right angle, so you have to use law of sines. Good question. Now, some of you like to just kind of see, like, am I on the right track? Am I doing this right? What do we know about triangles? The longest side is across from the largest angle. So what's the largest angle here? C, 102. What's the longest side? C, 56.49, right? Smallest angles across from the smallest side. You can kind of see if you're on the right track. But all it is, guys, is just setting up a proportion. Huh? I'm sure you've done this before. Yeah, that's why we do this now during your AP weeks. All right, let's do the next one. Okay, again, same kind of information's given. What is given to us? Two what? Two angles and a side, okay? There's going to be a different case here in a minute when we go on, but whenever they give you two angles and one side, you do the exact same thing every time. You're always going to say, okay, let's find that missing angle first. How do you find the missing angle? You're going to add and subtract from 180. So I'm going to say 180 minus, I'm going to add 98 plus 43. So how big is angle C? 39 degrees. Perfect. All right, angle C is 39 degrees. So what are the two pieces of information that are missing that we need to find? Side A and side B. Do I have a side length and its corresponding angle measure? Yes. 39 degrees and 22. Yes. Guys, please stop making that noise. Just focus for like 20 more minutes. It's real simple. So I have sine of 39 over 22. And it does not matter which side you find. Whatever you guys want to do, just use the correct angle measure. So what do you want to do? A? Okay. So sine of 43 over, I don't know. A fraction equal to a fraction. So we do what? Cross multiply. So 22 times the sine of 43 equals A times the sine of 39. And then what's my last step? Divide. Good. Divide by sine 39. So what's A equal? 22 sine 43 divided by sine 39. What'd you guys get? Perfect. 23.84. And what's our measurement? Feet. So we're solving our triangle. We found the one missing angle. We found one of our missing sides. What's the other side we need to find? Feet. All right, go back to your what was given to you. So you have the sine of 39 over 22 equals. Now if we're finding side B, what angle do we need to use? Angle B. Perfect. So sine 98 over B. For the 12th time, what do? Cross multiply, right? 22 times the sine of 98 equals b times the sine of 39. And then divide. Perfect. Divide by sine 39. So guys, how long is side b? 22 times the sine of 98 divided by sine 39. What'd you guys get? Look, 34.618. Some of you are going to put that WebAssign and say it's 34.61. It's going to mark it wrong. You're going to send me this long email about your WebAssign is broken and blah, blah, blah. No, it's not, guys. Round to the nearest hundredth. This should be 34.6 what? 2. All right, we have to know how to round. So I'm telling you, do all of your calculations at the very end. If you guys are having calculator issues, let me know. We can talk about it at the end of class. So let me just go through this. Anthony, do you have a question? No. Okay. All right, let's look at the next set of information here. This is something called the ambiguous case. All right, this happens, if you guys notice, this could possibly happen when you are given 2 sides and the non-included angle. You are not going to be, in a case like this, you're not given 2 angles where you just add and subtract from 180 to find the last one. Something called the ambiguous case can occur if they give you 2 sides and an angle. So in this case, you could either have 1 triangle, you could have 2 triangles, or you could have no triangle. I'll show you. It's very, very simple, I promise. But this is the way I want you guys to set it up. Look at what is given to you. Always draw your picture. But what is given to you is 1 angle measure and 2 sides, right? Whenever you get 1 angle measure and 2 sides, you need to assume that there's 2 triangles. So I always set it up like this. Whatever is given in angle triangle 1 will be the same in 2. So I set it up like that. If I have A is 42 degrees in the first triangle, then A will be 42 degrees if there is a second triangle. But this only occurs, look, I don't have 2 angles where I can add and then subtract from 180. So what is missing? Angle C, angle B, and side C. So let's just focus on finding triangle 1. Do I have a side length and its corresponding angle measure? Yes. So go ahead and set your proportion up. You have sine 42 over 22 equals. Some of you are going to say, well, which angle should you solve for? Well, there's only one angle that you're going to be forced to solve for every time. Do you know anything about angle or side C? No, so you can't do anything with that. What's the only information that they gave us? Side B. So I'm going to say sine of B over 12. Now, guys, think about this for a second. When we find this answer, when we find the sine of B, are you finding the angle measure of B? No, you're finding the sine of the angle. So then how do you undo the sine? Second sine. You want that sine -1. It's in your calculator. So let's go ahead and solve, right? So I have 22 times the sine of B equals 12 times the sine of 42, correct? And then how am I going to get the sine of B all by itself? I'm going to divide. So I get the sine of B, and in your calculators, guys, go ahead and do it. 12 times the sine of 42 divided by 22. What do you guys get? 0.364998. That should be an indication to you of, well, it's probably not the angle measure. If one of the angles is 42 degrees, the other one is not 0.364. That should be an indication. So how do you get the angle measure? In your calculator, hit second sign, that little -1 comes up, and you can either enter in that decimal, need to have at least 5 digits, or just hit second and then the answer button. It'll pull the decimal in. But when you do that, how big is angle B? Perfect. 21.4 what? 1. Good. 21.41 degrees. So 21.41 degrees. Now,
you hit the negative sign button?
Now, to determine if there is a second triangle, how would you guys complete solving triangle 1? How would you solve for C? Perfect. You add A and B and do what? Perfect. You would say 42 plus 21.41 63.41, right? And take 180 from that. So I get angle C is 116.59 degrees. And then what's the side that's missing? C. So we would have to say sine of 42 over 22 equals sine of 116, and then just solve it, right? But how do you figure out if there's a second triangle? You are going to take this angle, this first angle that you find, every single time we do this, and you're going to find the supplement to that. What does that mean, supplement?
It
Adds up to 180. So I'm going to take 180 minus that angle. So 180 minus 21.41. And I get 158.59.
Why is there a second triangle?
We're seeing if there is a second triangle. You always have to check. If they only give you one angle and two sides, you always have to check to see if a second triangle is present. Huh? There could be, with the information that they give you, there could be a possibility that two triangles could be formed. This is how you check to see if that could happen. The first angle that you find, right? You're going to be given one. Then the first angle that you find the supplement of that. So if there was a second triangle, guys, how would you figure out what C was? You would add A and B. So what's 42 plus 158.59? It's 198 something, right? Well, how many degrees are in a triangle? 180. So if two angles are 198, could there be a third angle? No, so there's only one triangle here. That's how you check to see. If you added up those two and got less than 180, then you're like, oh wait, a second triangle does exist. So let's just go ahead and finish solving this first one. We're going to do a couple of examples of this. You'll see it'll make more sense. To find side C in my first triangle, I'm going to go back to my original that they gave me, sine 42 over 22. And I'm going to find side C. So what angle measure do I use? Sine of 116.59. How do you solve a proportion, guys? Cross multiply. So 22 times the sine of 116.59 equals C times the sine of 42. Divide both sides by the sine of 42. What's C going to equal? 22 times the sine of 116.59 divided by sine 42. How long is side C? 29.40. We're talking about feet. There you go. Okay. Check what they have given to you. Obviously, there's not a picture, so I went ahead and drew one. How many angles did they give us? One. So can I just add up the two angles and subtract from 180? No. So that means, I have to assume that there could be two triangles. So I already have it set up like that. So let's go ahead and find our first missing angle. So what information did they give us? What can I use? What's the side and a corresponding angle measure? Okay, tell me. How do I set it up? Sine of 85 divided by 15 equals what? Perfect. Sine of B over 25. Okay. I have a proportion equal to a proportion. Fraction equals a fraction. How do I solve? Cross multiply. So 15 times the sine of B equals 25 times the sine of 85. And then what's my last step? Divide it by 15. So again, am I finding the actual angle measure of B right now? No, I'm finding the sine of it. So plug that in your calculator. 25 times the sine of 85 divided by 15. What do you guys get? 1.66032. Again, that's not the angle measure. I have to hit second sign in my calculator to get that -1 to come up, and then I hit second answer. And when I do that, what do I get? Error. So what does that mean? Are there two triangles present here? No. Is there one triangle present? No. What's your answer here? There's no triangle. With the information they gave you, it mathematically would not work that a triangle could be formed. So here's, when you get an error message in your calculator, it's like, oh, wait a second, then the information they gave me does not form a triangle.
If I put error, I get
No, correct, because the answer is no triangle. It's going to say solve the triangle. You would say there's no triangle. All right, let's do another one. Let's do 5 and 6, and then I'll leave you guys alone till tomorrow. All right, what do they tell us? One angle or two? One. That means we have to assume there could be two triangles. So whatever is given in triangle 1, we also write down as given in triangle 2. So look at your information. Do you have an angle measure and its corresponding side length? Yes, right? So I'm going to just start off with that given information. Sine of 20.5 divided by 12. And then what do I have to find? They're forcing me to find what? Angle B, okay? So I have sine of B over 31. How do we solve this? Cross multiply, good. So 12 times the sine of B equals 31 times the sine of 20.5. Then I do one more thing. Divide by 12. So the sine of B is 31 times the sine of 20.5 divided by 12. What's that little decimal you get? 0.904702, blah, 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 blah. That's not the angle measure though, right? So I hit second sign, get that little sign -1. Second sign, second answer. How big is angle B? Perfect. 64.78 what? Degrees. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say, okay, in triangle 1, it's 64.78 degrees. So there is at least one triangle present, correct? Let's see if there's a second one. You could go ahead and continue solving, but let's go ahead and just see if there's a second triangle. How do I find out if there is a second triangle? We're going to find the what? How do I figure out what that angle could be? The supplement. So 180 minus 64.78. I get 115.22 degrees. So if there is a second triangle present, how would I figure out what angle C is? Add those two together. I get these two together is 135.72. Is that less than 180? It sure is. So what is angle C in triangle 2? 180 minus 135.72? Or 22, my bad. 180 minus 135.22? How much? What's 180 minus? 44.78. What's angle C in the first triangle? How'd you figure out angle C in the first triangle? You add A and B and you get 85.28, and then you do what? Subtract from 180. So angle C here is how much? 94.72 degrees. So in this case, guys, with the information that they gave you, there are actually two triangles that could be formed. So now we're missing side C in both triangles, correct? So we can solve for side C in both triangles. You just have to use the angle measure that you found. Go back to your original information. They gave you sine of 20.5 divided by the side length is 12 equals, in our first triangle, how big was angle C? Okay, so you have sine of 94.72 over little c. How do you solve this proportion? Cross multiply, good. So 12 times the sine of 94.72 equals C times the sine of 20.5. And then do what? Divide by sine of 20.5. So in triangle 1, how long is C? Triangle 1, how long is C? 31.15. Very good. 31.15 what? Meters. We're talking about meters. So in triangle 2, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to set up our proportion. Sine of 20.5. Was it over 12? Equals, but in this triangle, how big is C? Guys, how big is C in this triangle? 44.78. So it's sine of 44.78 over C. And you do the exact same thing. You're going to cross multiply. So you have 12 times the sine of 44.78 equals C times the sine of 20.5. Divide both sides by the sine of 20.5. So what does C equal in your little triangle? How long is C? 24.136. So that'd be 24.14 meters. So in this case, there were two triangles. Again, this is not like verifying trig functions and going through and finding stuff in the unit circle. This is just tedious. You just got to pay attention. All right, let's do example 6. I'll save 7 for tomorrow if you want to go ahead and do it, and then I'll do the 2 area problems tomorrow. But look at the given information. Do you have one angle or two? One. That means you have to assume there could be how many triangles? Two. All right, so I wrote down an angle A. In triangle 1 is 31, so if there is a second triangle, angle A will be 31. So let's figure out the missing piece in triangle 1. I know that the sine of A is 31 and the side length is 12, so there's my proportion. So how do I set up the second piece? Sine B over what? Over 5. Cross multiply. So 5 times the sine of 31 equals 12 times the sine of B. Divide both sides by 12. And again, are we finding the actual angle measure? No, you're finding the sine of the angle. So you have 5 times the sine of 31 divided by 12 is what? No. Do it again. So 0.21459. If you're going to put the actual decimal in the calculator yourself, at least give me 5 or 6 so you get the most accurate. So second sign, second answer. How big is my angle? $12.39. So angle B is 12.39 degrees. Put your degree symbol. So I'm going to come up here and say angle B is 12.39 degrees. Could I go ahead and figure out what angle C is? Yeah, but let's just check to see if there's even a second triangle that we have to worry about. How do I figure out if there is a second triangle? 180 minus. You're going to find the supplement. So I'm going to say 180 minus 12.39, and I get 167.61 degrees. How do I figure out if a second triangle exists given that information? I'm going to add those two. If I add 167.61 plus 31, I get 198.61. What'd you guys just prove? There is no second triangle. You see that one step just to see if there is one. If there is one, then it's like, oh, geez, now I got to find more stuff. But it's not a big deal. You just set up the proportions. But let's go ahead and finish this. If I know angle A and angle B in triangle 1, how do I find C? Add them. Good. 31 plus 12.39. Subtract from 180. Angle C is a big one. It's 136.61 degrees. No big deal. So now what's the only piece that's missing? Side C. Okay, so set up your original proportion was the sine of 31 over 12 equals, I just figured out what C was. So sine of 136.61 over little c. And again, how do we solve these proportions? Cross multiply. So 12 times the sine of 136.61 equals c times the sine of 31. And then my last step, divide by sine of 31. So how long is side C? 12 times the sine of 136.61 divided by sine of 31. What do you guys get? 16.0056. How do you put that into WebAssign? How long is this?
16.01.
Thank you. It's 16.01 what? Centimeters. Please make sure you guys round correctly. You are going to get them wrong on WebAssign for silly stuff like that. Not because you don't know how to use your calculator, or not because you don't know how to use the law of sines, but because you're not paying attention to rounding. So tomorrow, I'm going to do examples 7, which is the end of this one, and then 2 really quick area formula, super easy. If you're not here, no big deal. It'll be like a 10-minute video. If you are here, you'll be able to do that and then just work on the homework assignment.